Welcome to the Political Matrix News. We have the sources, we have the truth from inside the Political Matrix.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the Playco Matrix News podcast tonight. I guess today is January 22nd. I'm joined with Mike Bates. How you doing, Mike?
Hi, I'm doing well, Greg. We got a new sheriff in town.
We do, and it is a wonderful time with the OK Corral. Oh, my God, he's done so much more in the first 3 or 4 days, I think, Biden did in the last, 50 years.
Well, he has certainly done a lot to dismantle the last 4 years of Biden-Harris. And my favorite part of the inauguration speech, just got to show the pettiness that I sometimes engage in. My favorite part of Donald J. Trump's inauguration speech was as he was explaining item by item by item how he would dismantle the previous 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration, all while Biden and Harris were sitting in the very front row, stone-faced, while the rest of the rotunda was enthusiastically applauding. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And understand, I'm not a huge Trump fan, right? I mean, regular viewers know that. But you don't have to be a fan of Trump to appreciate that. You only have to be a fan of the United States of America. And that I am.
A big MAGA Trump maniacs or zealots or anything, but we are realists and pragmatic Republicans at that. And the looking at the entire view of, everybody sitting down when everybody else is standing up. Even during the Martin Luther King speech, the Reverend from Detroit did, and that was awesome. I thought we're going to show it here real quick. Part of the Reverend, part of the speech, where Camilla basically was grimacing during that, which I think is very interesting. So, yeah, I mean, it was just weird.
Well, in that speech, as you know, quoted a significant chunk of the Let Freedom Ring speech, which, by the way, was the original name of that speech. It became I Have a Dream, but that was not part of his script. That was added spontaneously. Now, he'd given that I Have a Dream segment many times in other speeches across the country.
Yeah.
But that day...
King did, too. So, I mean, it was very fitting to do that on the same day. The inauguration that was for the Martin Luther King celebrations. And so, I mean, it's very fitting for him to do that. And the whole idea that the Vice President, Kamala Harris, looked like she was grimacing and could barely even give an applause with it. Shameful.
It is. It's a lot like at State of the Union addresses before joint sessions of Congress. You'll have the president say something like, let's unite America and be wonderful or whatever, right? Some very generic thing. And the party that doesn't hold the presidency sits on their hands. While the other side enthusiastically goes crazy with applause.
We get the pettiness of the State of the Union addresses, but I mean, this is a whole different type of an event, and this is a whole different type of speech about bringing everybody together and bringing everybody to, making sure that everybody's unified and all the fighting is over and all the hatred and bigotry is gone.
Well, the problem with that, though, is that the left only likes unity and not fighting when you are simply agreeing with them. The moment you oppose them or want to do anything that they don't like, well, now suddenly you're the bigot, you're the enemy, you're wrong, you're the one causing dissent. It's like, no, actually, you're the one causing dissent here. Democrats only like unity when it means agreeing with them completely.
Yeah, a little bit of ass-kissing there is all they want. And, I mean, it's just really sad. I mean, the speech he gave was incredible. I thought, I mean, because it wasn't really, the tone was a little flat with the words that he was saying. I mean, because I think it was more generated for an outward audience instead of an inward audience. Is driven more for applause lines and more of the subdued setting that it was in being endorsed. But that being said, the stuff that he said was very, very important and very needed to be said.
It was very obvious he stuck to the script. I have had the opportunity to sit directly behind Donald Trump. I say directly behind. It was directly behind and maybe 4 or 5 people over, okay? But second row, right behind him, giving speeches before. And I followed along with the teleprompter as he's giving the speech. And it's always amusing to see how often he jumps off the script goes down some rabbit trail, and then we'll resume. I would hate to be the teleprompter operator trying to keep up with him as far as where he is, but he definitely kept to the script for his inaugural address. Now, right after that, at Statuary Hall, he gave an address to his supporters, and that was typical Trump rambling, and, that was pretty lame, I thought.
It wasn't really on target too well. It was in a lot of different targets.
Well, it was a very different live target, certainly, but the audience on TV was the same. I think I would have advised him otherwise, but, whatever. And he doesn't take people's advice, and he certainly wouldn't be taking mine. But he wasted no time with signing some important executive orders, with signing some important pardons, and getting on with the business of making America great again. And for that, I applaud him. Our 4-year nightmare of Biden-Harris is finally, thank God, over.
I mean, today they found tunnels going from Mexico to El Paso, whenever they're working on the wall, because they started working on the wall almost immediately.
Yeah, well, they've known those tunnels were there. They weren't new, but they're finally going to do something about it.
Yeah, well, they're also finding out where they're ending up at. I mean, some of them were ending up in buildings in El Paso that they found. And so, I mean, the whole idea, the entire charade that they put together, I mean, it's something a little bit more complicated than I think a few migrant workers could do. It's something, there's a lot of engineering in putting tunnels that go for miles and miles together.
Oh, these are cartel tunnels, not too dissimilar to the Hamas tunnels in Gaza.
Exactly.
What do you think, Greg, of Donald Trump wanting to designate these Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations?
They are foreign terrorists. They're decapitating people. They're beheading people. I mean, they're dismembering individuals over there in Mexico. They cut their arms off, their hands off. They mutilate them. They do every single thing that the Hamas terrorists do to people who they kidnap over there in the Middle East. And I mean, there's a lot of similarities there. I mean, if you take the religious aspect out of it, their religion is cocaine and heroin and drugs and power. And so that's their religion. And so, I mean, it's, I think it's very fitting to call the cartel. Now, I saw the New York Times today. They had an issue with cartel being called terrorist activity, terrorist groups, because it'll mess up the apple cart of migrant workers coming over here. It'll mess up the flow of work because the cartel is very active with migrant workers, which I had no idea what the hell anybody cares about that or why they care about that. And the whole idea here is that the cartel is a cartel and they should be treated as a terrorist organization, not some worker, creation program for, migrant workers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Al Capone and in real life and Vito Corleone in fiction, they help the poor. So just because you do some good doesn't make you entirely good. What do you think, though, Greg, with this?
I mean, what's good about, basically, being a coyote and selling these people over here to the farmers and everything? I mean, there's nothing good about that.
Well, the smuggling wasn't the part I was referring to as being good. But what do you think might be the end result of such a designation? I mean, are we going to be doing some cross-border attacks on cartel sites in Mexico?
We should. I mean, Mexico basically...
With or without further congressional support.
Has basically been declaring war on America without declaring war by sitting... I mean, people don't realize that because they're not familiar with the border, but they actually use Mexican tanks to bring people over. And they use Mexican tanks and they fire upon our border patrol with Mexican military arms, and they have done that over the last 20 or 30 years. People don't realize that. And
so is this going to happen with or without further congressional authorization? Is it just, they're terrorists, we can do it, or are we going to get specific authorization through Congress to do it?
I think the president, as they have in the past, has a lot of leeway to do a good amount of, troublemaking and peace creation on his own before having to declare war. But I do think that if he weren't needed Congress, I think he'd have it.
Well, it frightens the hell out of me that he might do it without it. You're not wrong.
It's scary.
Yeah, you're not wrong that the President of the United States has significant authority to do something like that against a terrorist organization.
Right.
But if that involves sending U.S. military personnel across the border into Mexico to conduct lethal kinetic operations
I think this is
against
where AI
Mexicans,
comes in.
whether they're the cartel people or not, that to me crosses a line and should not be done
Well,
without further congressional authorization. It doesn't have to be a declaration of war. We haven't declared war since
right, that's
December,
true.
10th, 1941.
Yeah. I mean,
That was
I
Germany,
think
by
we
the
can do
way,
a lot
not
of that with
Japan.
AI. I think that there's AI. We can do a lot of that with that now. The drones and unmanned drones. I think they can
But
do
even
a
that's
lot of
using a
attack.
military. But even that's using American military personnel and equipment to do a cross-border attack.
Well, it is,
The
but
president shouldn't be doing that on his own.
it's not human DNA. So as long as we don't send the people over there, we can operate out of Tampa or some other military
Yeah, but
base
using that argument,
crossing the border.
but using that argument, you're saying that you can launch an ICBM and take them out. I mean, certainly you don't support that, do you? Well, maybe you do. Maybe your silence speaks volumes, but I wouldn't support it. Now, look, I'm in favor of going after these cartels.
We're
I
talking
think
about
just
drug
we have to be
dealers
careful how we do it. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
we got to be careful how to do it. But I mean, whenever we start realizing that the drug cartels are the equivalent of the military action of the country that they're harboring in or they're controlling. I mean, the drugs. I mean, these cartels are controlling Nicaragua. They're controlling Venezuela. They're controlling Mexico. I mean, they're controlling the entire Central American region and Panama and everything else. I'm not saying declare war on all of them. Declare war. I mean, the war on drugs. Well, back when it was marijuana and cocaine, yeah, we lost that war. This war on fentanyl and heroin, it needs to be stopped. We can't lose again. I mean, marijuana now has been brought into the society where it's almost everyday use and everything else, to where it's been used in a manner to where people can use it in a safe way. Cocaine, still not good, and it still needs to be gone after. But heroin and fentanyl, which is what they're really bringing over, and all the human trafficking that they're bringing over, along with all the terrorists, everything, that are coming from other countries through the southern border because they can't fly over here because they're on the do not fly list or some other reason why they can't fly over here. But no, the people who are coming through the border like that, it needs to be stopped. I mean, it's definitely a threat to our national security. It's a threat to our future generations. It's a threat every which way.
I'm not saying nothing should be done, Greg. I'm just saying it should be done lawfully, and that means congressional authorization, which I'm not so sure the president would get. I just don't want him to be using a terrorist organization designation as a free pass to do military strikes against targets on Mexicans.
Yeah, but you're talking about the Congress right now. In 2 years, we might have a whole different type of Congress.
Well, I understand that, but they would still have to repeal the authorization.
Then you have a Congress put there socialists and Democrats who are not going to allow anything to go through.
Okay, I hear you, but unless they put in a sunset date in the authorization of military force against the Mexican cartels, it would continue into the next Congress. Yeah. So, you deal with
it done quickly and get it done now.
Well, if you're going to do it, do it quickly, do it right.
You got
get on with life.
3 days to do it. Get all done by January 20th, 2026.
But we'll see what happens. We're still in the very early stages of that argument.
Right. It's the early stages, but I think it's going to be a very quick argument. Because one thing we're seeing with Trump is that there are no early stages. He is just clicking like a clock and kicking everything out very, very rapidly. And so I think the whole idea of it being a long process is going to be shortened rapidly. I mean, with the way he's managing the government.
Yes, but there's a big difference between implementing his domestic policy agenda, which I largely support, and attacking a foreign nation without specific congressional authorization to do so. That's my problem with it.
Well, are we really attacking the nation, or are we attacking the cartel that resides in that nation?
Well, they're in that nation. And what's the difference? I mean, we may not be attacking the Parliament of Mexico in Mexico City, but if you're launching a military attack, of course it's an attack. You got to be careful how you do it. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. You have to be very careful how you do it. That's very correct.
And I'm concerned that Trump is going to be a little too enthusiastic about it, and he's not going to do it the right way. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I agree with you. And I'd be very hopeful that the Mexican government would actually assist us with the attack of the cartel.
Well, and of course, the Mexican government is very corrupt, largely because the people in the Mexican government, the federales, are being paid off by the cartels. They make more money off the cartel payments than they do from the government that's actually employing them.
Exactly.
So that's going to be a very steep hill to climb and get over in getting the assistance of the Mexican government.
Yeah,
Now,
because
there's
these are
ways that we can
different.
force it, and if we do, great. But it needs to be done lawfully. That's
Well,
all
it
I'm
doesn't even
saying.
be lawfully. You're correct.
Well,
But
it sounds to me like we're a little too enthusiastic to do it, and laws be damned, they may be doing it without it. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm
Right.
saying. So
Okay.
on the record, I want congressional authorization to do it right, to do it lawfully.
Right.
But I don't believe the president has the authority to invade or attack Mexico, even if it's some cartel drug camp in the middle of a jungle somewhere. We don't have the authority, the legal authority to do that at this point in time.
However, I guess if you're not looking at it as the same way as we have the legal authority to attack a terrorist organization in the middle of Iran or Syria or Afghanistan, that's,
Yes, but we have specific congressional authorization to do that
yes, we do.
in the
And
Middle
so-
East. If
Right.
we were to get that authorization from Mexico, I'd be like, okay, if that's what it's
Yeah.
going to take, let's do it.
That's what we need to do. That's what we need
But
to work.
absent congressional authorization, which does not have to be a declaration of war, but absent congressional authorization, it would be overstepping his bounds. And I think it would be a huge mistake. And I also don't think it would be supported by the American people. Not that popular support trumps law, if you'll pardon the expression, but it's not above the law.
Right.
But presidents can get away with a lot when the public is behind them.
That's
I'm
right. Sure.
simply saying that even if the public is behind them, it should still be done lawfully.
Yeah, well, I agree. Everything should be done lawfully. That's one thing we learned from the Biden administration about how much was done unlawfully. That's the reason why we're in the position we're in now.
Well, the thing is about the Biden administration, if you do something unlawfully, you just get a pardon from them and you're good to go.
Yeah, right
Free
now
pass.
he's pardoning everybody.
Yeah.
The grandkids all the way up to probably, if you could pardon his grandpa who died, 20 years ago, you'd probably do that too.
It was sick what he did.
But he didn't pardon
Absolutely
himself.
sick.
That's one thing he did not do. He did not pardon himself.
Well, it's questionable whether a president can pardon himself. The Constitution doesn't say he can. The Constitution doesn't say he can't.
You're right.
So there's really strong arguments both ways, although I would come on the side of he can't. Otherwise, the law doesn't apply to the president.
Right.
He can simply commit whatever crime he wants, pardon himself, and be done with it. So I would argue that he cannot. But that's an academic discussion for another day.
It is.
The ones that he did do were, while not unlawful, I'm not saying he didn't have the constitutional authority to do it, but it was highly, highly inappropriate. From Dr. Fauci to General Milley, and certainly all of the J6 committee and their staff. Don't forget their staff were included in the pardon.
If that was included, so that way there's no way to investigate anything.
Exactly.
And how they mishandled it.
Except it's not that there's no way to investigate.
Right.
And looking at the clock, we probably need to take a break. Why don't we take the break and we get back? We'll discuss about what should be done now that those pardons have been issued. Can we do that?
We'll do that. We'll be right back and stay tuned.